And we're back. It has been refreshing to have this time of coffee with our Senator Chris Coons, our brother, our minister of the gospel. You get to choose what you want to call him today, but it has been refreshing. And even over the break, we had some good dialogue. So now I want to turn the corner a little bit and just try to get an understanding of what led you to the public service life.
Well, it's the kind of journey that looking back makes sense, but to me and certainly to my parents didn't make sense. I was doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. So I finished college and I go to Washington for a year, and I did research and writing about apartheid in South Africa. And a minister friend of mine, Reverend Bob Evans of Connecticut, invited me to go on a trip with a whole group to Kenya and South Africa. I did that. Another long story. I could fill in a lot of details, but in South Africa, I got to work and worship alongside some remarkable pastors. Desmond Tutu was one of them, Bears Nodia, and many others. When I came back, a friend from here, from Wilmington, introduced me to a guy named Bob Hayes in New York who was running something called the Coalition for the Homeless. And this was in the late 80s, at a time when mass homelessness on the streets of all the major cities of our country had reemerged for the first time since the Depression. There were just thousands of people on the streets of New York. And so I did that work for most of a year, and it challenged me. You know, I'm in Grand Central Station at night helping adult homeless men, many of whom had been on the streets for years. I'm staying in homeless shelters. When Bob sent me to Iowa and Michigan, and I went to 5 different states to help organize statewide coalitions. I was a young man. He says, well, you know, you get a per diem for travel for $25 a day. I said, okay, that's great. And I came back 10 minutes later and I said, hang on a minute, where am I staying for $25 a day? And he points at the wall and he says, the name of the organization is? And I said, Coalition for the Homeless. He goes, where are they staying tonight?
Oh, wow.
I said, homeless shelters. He goes, that's where you're staying. Oh. He said, here's the rule. If they are full, you are not to stay there. I will call someone and get you a couch or a, you know, but as much as possible for the next 6 months, I want you in homeless shelters, in Georgia, in Michigan, in New York. And it was a wonderful, powerful, challenging period. I was scared, I will tell you. I'd not spent time in homeless shelters, not just visiting, but staying. But the men I met and the insights I got and the lessons I learned, they see everything. And so many people in our country just walk right past folks who are homeless as if they're not really there, as if they're not human, as if they're not our brothers and sisters. There were relatively few homeless women at that point, but I'll never forget meeting this mom from central Iowa. She'd been burned out of her house. She and her son were living under a bridge in the back of a pickup truck. And her son was just so, he was a young man but healthy, but he was defending his mom every night because a homeless woman on the street faces a lot of challenges. Anyway, that put me in touch with a ministry on the Eastern Shore called Common Ground. That was fascinating. Long story, how did I end up in public service? I ended up going to law school, and while in law school going to divinity school as well, and while there in New Haven representing a lot of homeless women and children in landlord-tenant court, and then coming back here, helping launch a nonprofit. This was a long journey. Ultimately, each of the issues I was involved in, whether it was running an AmeriCorps program that helped promote service, or housing and homelessness, or apartheid, and U.S. policy towards South Africa, in each case, government action was critical. Providing better access to affordable housing, providing better access to affordable education, having a foreign policy that put human rights and fighting racism above fighting with the Soviets and communism and fighting Marxism. In each case, government action was a key piece of it. So I got more and more involved in helping other people who were running for office, supporting and advising candidates for office. And the party chairman, the Democratic Party chairman, I'm a Democrat, the Democratic Party chairman came and asked me if I'd run for office in 1999. My wife and I had infant twins. I mean, they were like 9 months old. And I'm not a rude man usually, but I laughed in his face. I said, that's nuts. I don't want to be involved in county government. Oh, it's a mess.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that's exactly why we want you to do it, right? There's some challenges, some ethical challenges in the county government. I came home, talked to my wife, and she looks at me and she says, you've told me you grew up here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when your dad left and your mom was on her own, she was raising 3 boys by herself, where did she take you all the time? I said, the Kirkwood Library. She goes, Kirkwood Highway Library. I said, yeah. She goes, and whose was that? I said, she goes, that's a county library. I said, where are you going with this? And she said, in your youth group at your church, you guys went to the county park all the time. I said, yeah. She said, and you told me a nice story about this county police officer who actually was encouraging and supportive when he could have treated you not well because you were being difficult as a young man. I said, yeah. She goes, do you realize that county government has helped you or supported you in some way over many, and you've never given a thing back? Mm-hmm. And I went, I think I know where this is going, and I don't like it. She said, you need to run for county council president. It's the right thing for you to do. Yeah. You need to start giving back. Well, I already had a full-time job. I was a lawyer for a company. Halfway through the campaign, we get pregnant. So we ended up with 3 kids under 3. And I had 2 full-time jobs, being county council president, representing 500,000 people. And I was still a lawyer for a company that expected me at my desk by 8 a.m. I'll never forget, no, I don't remember those 4 years. They were so busy, they were so intense. But within a few weeks of being elected and actually doing the job, you quickly realize whether you love it or hate it. And I loved going to civic association meetings, taking phone calls from people, trying to solve problems, trying to help fix the budget. It was difficult, it was frustrating, there were long hours, but I loved doing it. I just loved it. And I ended up doing 10 years in county government.
Wow. Wow. That's
on very daily issues. People's sewers backing up, people, trying to get their library fines cleared, trying to improve low-income housing for seniors. I mean, there's no end of good things to do that impact people in your community.
Yeah, so you served as the county president, council president for 4 years, and then you decided, well, I guess I'm needed a little higher.
All in. No, then I did county executive for 6.
Is there any particular thing you would like to talk about with your county executive experience?
I could go on at way too long a length.
No, you can
there were a lot of changes I thought needed to be made, and it was a difficult time, in no small part because halfway through my time was when the financial crisis happened in 08, 09, right. And our revenue dropped by 1/3, and we had to make some really tough choices in terms of personnel and spending cuts and tax increases. And I went and did 13 town halls where I'd show up and we'd put out a case for 10 minutes about, here's the choices in front of me, right? Cut all of these services to the bone, or make these tough choices in terms of laying people off or cutting, expenses, or raising taxes. And I want to discuss this with you. And I'd have 100, 200 people. We'd be there 3-4 hours in some cases. And by the end of it, county council, the county workforce, we adopted a middle road that was a mix of cuts and tax increases. But I came away from that convinced I represent adults. That families sit down around the kitchen table and make hard choices all the time.
That's right.
Things don't work out. You get disappointed. You don't get the raise you expected. You have a sickness in your family. Your sister calls and she's been in a car accident. You have to send. People have to make hard choices all the time. So treat the people you represent like they're grown-ups. Put the choice in front of them. They'll make the right choice. So much of politics, people trying to act like it's all cuteness and games. It's not cuteness and games. No. It's hard choices.
Yes.
And I actually came out the other side of that, like more excited about doing it. Right. Even though, I mean, those were hard conversations.
Yes.
Those were not easy. We had to shut down things that people loved. We made some people very, very unhappy. But Americans, everybody's okay if they get heard. if the process is fair,
that's the key.
if you are transparent.
Absolutely.
The first thing I did the year that we had the biggest budget shortfall, I announced that I was taking a 7% pay cut, and I was making my I took a 10% pay cut, and I made my whole cabinet take a 7% pay cut because they were the highest paid county employees. Rule number 1. Ask your wife before you make an announcement like that. I mean, I came home and she was like, "You did what today?" That was really foolish on my part. She was 100% supportive. I don't mean to suggest she wasn't. She backed me up 100% on all these things. But I was very clear that what I was doing was asking other families to bear some of the pain. And boy, if you don't start by leading yourself, by doing it yourself, it doesn't go over well.
I have several members of our congregation who are county workers. And one of the things they said, I remember when I first announced that you were going to come the first time you came to preach for us, and they were very happy.
Good.
One of the things they said, and I didn't understand it then, but while you're talking, it did. Then now that I'm getting an understanding, she said he leads by example.
That's right.
Which is very hard in government or in politics right now. And I didn't know how much, but the way she put it to me was that you said, before we cut anything, we're going to cut my salary. And I thought that was just awesome. And then she did share that you cut also some of your cabinet, not some of your cabinet salaries as well, and others joined in. But when people know that you in it with them, they tend to receive you better. And Americans are adults. They're as long as we're heard, we're willing to compromise, and that's really, really good. You had an opportunity to fill the shoes of a giant. I mean, you were the county exec, and you decided, I'm going to go for it.
Well, I'll tell you how that happened. So it's January of election year of 2010. I'm in my second term, and actually, I'll roll back just a little bit. So Christmas time the previous year, so it's 2009, and the Affordable Care Act. This is President Obama's first full year, and they are pushing and trying to get all sorts of things passed. And we'd almost never taken our kids to Washington. And Annie says, well, why don't we go down for a day? The kids have never seen the Capitol or Smithsonian. So we go down. And we called over to Senator Kaufman's office. He succeeded Joe Biden for 2 years. And we go up in the gallery, and we sit, and Senator Kaufman was presiding over the Senate. And I now know he broke the rules. You're not supposed to do this. He saw us up in the gallery, and he waves. You're not supposed to wave. And my son's waves, And as we go out in the hallway afterwards, my son Jack looks me right in the eyes and he says, "Someday, Dad, that'll be you."
Okay.
And I grabbed his hands and I said, "No, it won't. I know how these things work. Daddy's going to be a county executive, and that's it. I'm done. There's no path towards me doing anything like that." And he goes, "Dad, you got to believe." I didn't know what that meant. January, Bo Biden calls me. Out of the blue.
Okay.
January 28th, I think. He calls me, "Hey, Chris, how are you?" "Great, Bo, how you doing?" He goes, "I'm going skiing." I go, "Okay, go skiing, great. Got the family in the car." "Good for you." He says, "Oh, has my dad called you?" I said, "No. What are we talking about?" He goes, "Oh, well, something really big's about to happen." I said, "What are we talking about?" He goes, "Well, I'm going away for the weekend because I'm making an announcement on Monday that I am not going to run for his seat. Everyone expects me to run for his seat." I said, "What are we talking about?" He goes, "I think you ought to run for his seat." And I'm like, "What? I'm county executive. I'm not running for anything."
Right.
And he says, no, we've talked about it and thought about it. I'm in the middle of prosecuting this horrible pedophile in Georgetown, this pediatrician who abused all these kids. He goes, "I need to finish that. You should do this, not me." And then he hung up. His dad called, and he said, "I'd like you to run for my old seat." And then Governor Carper called, or Senator Carper called, right? And that was not an expected path. Sometimes things come to you unexpectedly.
Right.
And I jumped in, running against Mike Castle, who was a 2-term governor, 9-term congressman, had 95% name ID, 75% approval, and millions of dollars in the bank.
Yeah.
To say it was a long shot would be correct.
But
It worked out.
Because when God is for you, it doesn't matter what's against you.
Doesn't matter what's against you.
And I'm just so excited because when I was here then, I was here and I came in 2005, but I was here when the announcement came out that Bo was not going to run. When I heard that you would be the choice, no one said that you would win, but this would be a great opportunity for you because you had done so well in the county exec spot. There were people who were cheering you. A lot of times you may not be the most popular, but you become the favorite because of what you've done. Even though you governed during some very challenging times, but it shows the toughness of a person. I think it's Dr. King who said that the fiber of a man is not determined during the time of their comfort, but during the time of their controversy. And you have certainly proven to be a strong person. We're going to get ready for another break, and I want to come back. I know I usually only have one segment or two. You're going to edit this down. But I'm not editing anything. This is just a great opportunity for us to have this great conversation with our senator, friend, and brother. But we're going to come back, and then we're going to talk about the national level and what's going on there, because I heard a little rumor that the president of the United States, I don't really say his name too much, 45, I believe that's his number, but he said that Joe Biden is going to be harmful to God. I couldn't understand that one. So maybe I'm going to pick the senator's brain to get me some understanding on that. We'll be right back.